The countdown clock on the wall read 4 minutes and 9 seconds, and every second that passed felt like a stone dropping into my stomach. 3 Kaloth warships hung outside the station, their hulls dark and silent, weapons ports open and glowing faintly red. My name is Oliver Bennett, and I was not a soldier. I was not a negotiator. I was a junior language aide who had been dragged out of a supply closet office and shoved into the middle of the worst first contact crisis our station had ever faced, because I was the only person on board who had spent the last 6 weeks secretly learning to speak Kaloth. Commander Grace Whitmore stood beside me, her jaw tight, her eyes locked on the display where the lead warship's captain filled the screen. The captain was not the one I needed to worry about. Standing just behind her, arms crossed, plated in dark battle armor, was the warrior envoy herself, Varesha Val Thren. Her people called her the Blade of the Thren Fleet, and right now that blade was pointed straight at us. They think we insulted their flag ceremony, Grace whispered to me. Some translator error during the docking exchange. They are calling it a declared offense. If we cannot correct it in the next 4 minutes, they open fire. On a civilian station, I said. On a civilian station, she repeated. So whatever you learned in that language book, Oliver, I need you to use it right now. Not perfectly, just fast. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to press them flat against my legs to stop it. Every lesson I had memorized in the middle of the night suddenly scattered out of my head like startled birds. I looked at the screen, at Varesha's face, calm as stone, waiting to see if the humans would fumble their way into a war or find a way out of one. I stepped in front of the camera. Honored warrior, I said, forcing the Kaloth words out of my mouth, syllable by syllable, the way the language teacher on the recordings had drilled into me. We offer no offense to your flag or your fleet. The error was ours, not born of disrespect. For a moment nobody spoke. The clock ticked down, 3 minutes 50. Varesha tilted her head, studying me the way a predator studies something that might be food or might be trouble. Then her mouth opened, and what came out was not a battle order. It was a laugh, not a polite chuckle. A full, booming laugh that rattled through the comm speakers and made the younger officer beside her flinch. She pressed one gauntleted hand against her chest, as if she needed to hold herself together, and the laugh kept rolling, louder, longer, until tears actually welled at the corners of her eyes. Grace grabbed my arm. What did you say? Oliver? What did you say to her? I said we didn't mean to offend your fleet, I said, my voice cracking with panic. That's what I practiced. That's exactly what I practiced. The Kaloth captain on screen looked as confused as we were, glancing sideways at her warrior envoy, who was now leaning against the command console, unable to stand up straight, her whole massive frame shaking with laughter that showed no sign of stopping. The countdown clock kept moving. 3 minutes 10. 3 minutes. She has to answer, Grace hissed. If she does not call off the strike order in time, the automated defense protocol takes over whether she wants it to or not. Oliver, fix this. I had no idea what I had actually said. My stomach dropped through the floor of the station. I had spent 6 weeks studying grammar and vocabulary lists, convinced I understood the language well enough to be useful in an emergency, and instead, I had apparently said something so absurd that a decorated warrior envoy was doubled over laughing, while her fleet's weapons stayed hot and ready. Varesha, I said, trying again, switching to a simpler phrase, one I was more certain of. Please, we need your answer. Time is short. She held up one hand, still laughing, and managed to gasp out a single Kaloth word to her crew. The younger officer beside her, clearly fighting to keep a straight face herself, translated quietly for the benefit of the humans listening. She says, the officer said, her voice trembling with suppressed laughter of her own, that you did not say you meant no offense to our flag. What did I say? I asked, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. You said, the officer continued, that you meant no offense to our flagpole's laundry. The bridge went dead silent, except for Varesha's continued, helpless laughter in the background. Laundry? Grace repeated flatly, staring at me. The words are close, I said weakly. One syllable off. I must have mixed up the endings. 2 minutes 40. The automated countdown ticked steadily downward, indifferent to the fact that the most dangerous warrior in the Thren fleet was currently laughing too hard to give an order. "Fix it," Grace said through gritted teeth. "Now, however you can." I stepped closer to the camera, sweat sliding down my back despite the station's cool air. I thought fast, abandoning the careful, formal phrases I had memorized, and reaching instead for the simplest, most direct words I knew, the ones from the very first lessons, the ones even a child would understand. "Varesha," I said, looking directly at her through the screen. "We are sorry. We are not enemies. Please stop the attack." She wiped her eyes with the back of her gauntlet, drawing in a long breath, visibly trying to pull herself back into the posture of a warrior envoy rather than someone who had just had the best laugh of her month. She straightened, looked at her captain, and spoke 3 sharp words in her own language. The weapons ports on the lead warship began closing. A collective breath went out across the bridge. Grace's shoulders dropped an inch. The countdown clock froze at 1 minute 52 seconds, and then blinked out entirely as the threat status changed from red to yellow. "She has withdrawn the offense declaration," the young Kaloth officer said, still smiling despite herself. "Varesha says she cannot, in good conscience, destroy a station that produces such creative insults to laundry. She says it would be a waste of good material." I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding, my knees nearly giving out beneath me. Grace put a hand on my shoulder, steadying me, though I could see she was fighting back a laugh of her own now that the danger had passed. "You saved this station," she said quietly, "by insulting their laundry." "I think I saved it by accident," I said. "Most good things happen that way," she replied. The formal summit was rescheduled for 2 hours later, once tempers on both sides had cooled, and repair crews confirmed no lasting damage from the near miss. When I walked into the meeting hall, dressed in the stiff formal uniform reserved for diplomatic occasions, Varesha was already there, seated across from Grace and the station's other senior officers, her armor traded for a simpler ceremonial robe. The moment she saw me enter, she pressed her lips together, clearly trying not to smile, and failing entirely. "There he is," she said in accented but clear English, since her translator was active again. "The destroyer of flagpole laundry." A ripple of quiet laughter went around the table, even from officers who had been white with fear only hours earlier. "I want to apologize properly," I said, standing at the head of the table, my voice steadier now than it had been during the crisis. "I studied your language because I wanted to show respect. I did not expect to nearly start a war by mispronouncing a vowel." "You did not nearly start a war," Varesha said. "My crew nearly started a war because a translation drone gave my captain a poor reading of your dockmaster's flag protocol. You very nearly stopped one, with terrible grammar and excellent timing." "I will take that as a compliment," I said. "You should," she said. "Very few of your species have made me laugh in the middle of a countdown. It is memorable." Over the following hours, the summit moved from formal apologies to trade discussions, then to resource-sharing agreements that had been stalled for months before that day. Every time the talks grew tense, someone would mention laundry, and the tension would break just enough for both sides to find their way back to reasonable footing. It became a strange kind of shorthand, a private joke between 2 crews who had nearly destroyed each other's ships that morning. Near the end of the session, Varesha asked to speak with me privately, away from the main table. We stepped into a quiet observation room where the stars stretched out endlessly beyond thick reinforced glass, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "You are frightened easily," she said finally, studying me with the same intense focus she had shown from the beginning. "Your hands shook the entire time you spoke to me on that screen. I thought I was about to get everyone on this station killed," I said honestly. "Of course my hands were shaking." "And yet you kept speaking," she said. "Most translators freeze when they realize they have made an error. You kept trying different words until one of them worked. That is not something taught in language lessons." "I did not have a choice," I said. "The clock was running out." "There is always a choice," she said. "Yours was to keep trying, instead of giving up. That is rarer than you think, even among warriors." I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing, and we stood together in silence, watching the warships outside, slowly power down their remaining defense systems, the crisis officially over. "Tell me something," she said after a while. "Why did you spend 6 weeks learning my language when your station has translation devices that work perfectly well?" "Because devices do not show effort," I said. "Anyone can press a button and have words come out. I wanted you to know that at least one person here cared enough to struggle through it badly, on purpose, instead of doing it easily." She was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice had lost its teasing edge. "That is the real reason it worked," she said. "Not the mistake, the trying. My people respect effort more than perfection. A perfect greeting from a machine means nothing to us. A clumsy one from a person who chose to struggle for our sake means everything." "I will remember that," I said, "though I still plan to actually learn the correct words eventually." "Do not learn them too well," she said, the smile returning to her face. "I have grown fond of your laundry insults. It would be a shame to lose them entirely." 3 weeks later, the alliance between our station and the Thren fleet was formally signed, opening trade routes and shared defense agreements that would shape relations between our two peoples for years afterward. I stood near the back of the ceremony, no longer a junior aide hiding in a supply closet office, but the official liaison assigned permanently to Kaloth relations, a position created specifically because of what had happened that day. When it came time for the closing toast, tradition demanded that a representative from each side offer words of goodwill in the other's language. Grace nudged me forward, a knowing look on her face, and I understood immediately what she wanted. I stood, lifted my glass, and turned to face Varesha, who was watching me with open amusement, clearly expecting exactly what was about to happen. I opened my mouth to deliver the same formal phrase I had failed so badly weeks earlier, this time determined to get it right. I focused on every syllable, every vowel, everything the language recordings had taught me since that day, practiced over and over, until I was certain I had it perfect. I got through the entire sentence cleanly. Correct pronunciation, correct grammar. A flawless wish of honor upon her people's ancestors and their journey. The room was silent for a moment, waiting for her reaction. Varesha blinked, clearly caught off guard by my accuracy, and for the first time since I had met her, she looked almost disappointed. "That was correct," she said slowly. "I have been practicing," I said. "It was very correct," she repeated, sounding almost suspicious, as if she expected a trick. "I wanted to honor you properly this time," I said. "No laundry involved." She studied me for a long moment, then broke into a wide grin, raising her own glass toward mine. "Then I suppose I will have to find some other way to embarrass you," she said, "because a perfect toast from you is far more unsettling than a bad one." The room erupted into laughter, human and Kaloth alike, glasses raised together in a moment that felt less like the end of a diplomatic ceremony and more like old friends teasing each other after a long, hard day. Later that night, after the formal ceremony ended and most of the guests had returned to their quarters, I found Varesha alone on the observation deck, looking out at the same stars we had watched together weeks before, back when the station's fate hung on a mispronounced word. "You did well today," she said without turning around. "Both times, the bad version and the good one." "I almost got everyone killed the first time," I reminded her. "And instead you got everyone talking," she said. "My people do not forget easily, Oliver Bennett. We will tell the story of the flagpole laundry for generations, long after the trade agreements are dust and the treaties are forgotten. That is worth more to us than perfect grammar ever could be." "I am glad something good came out of nearly starting an interstellar war," I said. "So am I," she said, finally turning to face me, her expression softer than I had ever seen it, "though I would prefer, in the future, that you find less terrifying ways to make me laugh." "I will do my best," I said. "No promises." "Good," she said. "I would be disappointed if you actually kept that one." We stood together on the observation deck for a long while after that, saying little else, simply watching the stars and the quiet warships beyond the glass. Two people from entirely different worlds who had somehow found common ground in a single mispronounced word, and the 4 longest minutes either of us had ever lived through. It was not the ending anyone on that station had expected that morning, staring down 3 warships with weapons ready to fire. But it was the one we got, built not on flawless diplomacy or careful protocol, but on a shaking voice, a terrible accent, and a warrior woman who found something to laugh about even when the clock was running out. And somewhere on a Thren warship archive, filed permanently beside official treaty records and trade agreements, sat a translated transcript that future generations of Kaloth cadets would study during their diplomacy training, marked simply with the words that started it all: the human who insulted our laundry and saved us both.